Great. Well, thank you so much for coming today. My name is Lucy Sharrett. I am the coordinator of the Canadian Biotechnology Action Network, which is a coalition of 18 organizations, farmer, environmental, community, and social justice groups. I'm here today joined by Paul Slomp, who is the Youth Vice President of the National Farmers Union. And we're also happy to have by telephone Les Gills, who is a hog farmer in Ontario. We're pleased to be here today to share a major and decisive development in the story of the genetically modified pig called Enviropig. The genetically modified pig is being shelved by the University of Guelph, where the technology was developed, because the only industry sponsor of the GM pig has removed its funding. The regional newspaper called The Ontario Farmer has reported that Ontario Pork, the industry group that funds Enviropig, announced at its recent annual general meeting that they will redirect their funding away from the GM pig to other research. As a result, the university will not maintain its breeding herd of GM pigs and is closing down its active research. According to this report, the university will be putting Enviropig into what it calls genetic hibernation. Remaining research from the lead inventor of the GM pig will be published in peer-reviewed journals, but the active research is effectively finished. This is an important development with international implications. Enviropig was a contender to be the first genetically modified food animal approved in the world. It risked harming the pork industry due to consumer backlash here in Canada and in our international markets. Our question now is, what will the University of Guelph do about its current submission for approval of Enviropig to Health Canada and the Food and Drug Administration in the United States? We know that the university does not have the funds nor the dedicated active scientific expertise to answer questions from regulatory agencies. The university needs to withdraw its application to Health Canada. The university began research on Enviropig in 1995. The professors patented the GM technology, and patents exist in Canada, the US, and China, but no companies showed any serious interest in licensing the technology. The consumer controversy was growing and was set to hurt the market for pork and pork products. The GM pig was engineered to excrete less phosphorus in its feces. The idea was to reduce polluting phosphorus from large farms. However, there are many existing solutions to this problem of excess phosphorus. In particular, there is a technological fix which rendered the GM pig irrelevant. There is a simple and cost-effective technology of a hog feed supplement that achieves the same cut in phosphorus that was promised by the GM pig. The GM pig was created by 3 scientists at the University of Guelph. The lead scientist is the only one of the 3 who remains at the university, and he has been retired for 3 years. This is Professor Emeritus Cecil Forsberg, who is publishing what remains of his research. He is reportedly ready to pass the project on to somebody else. It's clear to us that the university does not have the funds nor the active scientific expertise to carry through with its application to Health Canada. It certainly does not have the public support. We ask the University of Guelph to be clear about their intentions. The public institution needs to reassure hog farmers and Canadian consumers that the GM pig project is closed for good by withdrawing their request to Health Canada and the FDA. The federal government should refuse to consider any applications for approval of GM animals. Health Canada has already wasted precious funds reviewing a GM pig that consumers and farmers do not want. The Canadian Biotechnology Action Network remains alarmed that a GM Atlantic salmon could be under review by Health Canada and Environment Canada. The regulatory departments will not tell Canadians if they are reviewing the GM fish for approval. This extreme secrecy from our government on such a controversial issue is unacceptable. GM animals are widely rejected by Canadians. Our government should reserve the talents of our scientific evaluators for useful and socially desirable technologies. I'll now pass the microphone to Paul Slomp.
Good morning. As farmers, we are immensely relieved to find out that the University of Guelph is closing its active research on Enviropig. The National Farmers Union is pleased that Ontario Pork understands the risk this technology poses to our markets and has decided to redirect its funding elsewhere. Finally, we are grateful to all consumers and farmers who joined together and spoke out against this GM pig. It's become increasingly clear that this genetically modified pig is a redundant technology. There is a technology already on the market called phytase that does exactly the same thing Enviropig promised to do. Phytase is a supplement added to hog feed that helps the pig break down phosphorus in its feed. The supplement is cost effective and does the same thing that the GM pig was supposed to do. Additionally, there are many on-farm management practices that farmers use to reduce phosphorus pressure on the environment around pig barns. This GM pig is an unnecessary technology. Furthermore, it threatens pork markets. It's clear that consumers do not want genetically modified food animals. The University of Guelph was trying to commercialize research that would have had disastrous effects on farmers. There is no official avenue for consumers to voice their opposition to the genetic modification of animals. Without labeling of GM foods, the only choice left to consumers would have been to avoid Canadian pork products. This was obviously a major concern for hog farmers. All hog farmers would have been affected by this consumer backlash. Hog farmers would have carried the market risk associated with the approval of Enviropig. In fact, they still do, as long as a request for approval of Enviropig remains inside Health Canada. This is why the University of Guelph needs to remove its submission for approval from Health Canada, even if there is no one to commercialize the technology right now. If Enviropig is approved by Health Canada, it will undermine consumer confidence in Canadian pork. We need to learn lessons from this Enviropig fiasco. We call on the federal government to stop accepting applications for genetically modified animals. The government needs to recognize that considering the approval of GM animals risks serious market harm.
Thank you. So I'll invite Les Gills, a hog farmer in Ontario, to join us by phone for a minute to give us a perspective from hog farming in Ontario.
Good morning. As a small farmer in eastern Ontario, the grant that's being released is greatly appreciated by farmers and consumers that I have personally. When they heard about the program being shelved, they were so relieved that they called me, and I had told them that the pig farmers in Ontario, the relief of this program is greatly appreciated, and the market for the pork, I think, will greatly be improved for the Pork Marketing Board in Ontario. And I also talked to many other farmers, and they were surprised that this has happened. So overall, the pork research at Guelph for the Enviropig having been shelved is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Les. So we'll invite any questions that there might be. And if there are questions for Les, we can ask him directly to answer.
On the application, the University of Guelph might take the position that the research is done, the application is in, therefore it should move forward, because the next step in their minds is commercialization.
There is no current interest in commercialization, either from hog farmers or consumers, obviously, but there's also been no expressed interest by any company or investor. More than this, if the university is closing its breeding program and has no current scientific expertise that's funded and active, they will not be able to reply to questions from Health Canada. we know that there are some very complicated, complex questions that Health Canada should be asking of the University of Guelph. We don't see that science reflected in the current literature. So our understanding is that, or our view is that the University of Guelph is not equipped now to answer questions from Health Canada. This is a file that is collecting dust inside Health Canada and should be officially withdrawn. And if the Ontario Hog Producers Association, Ontario Pork, has withdrawn funding from the research, this indicates how seriously the risk of economic harm is viewed, and is an indication that really the university would be acting alone if they are to pursue commercialization and if they are to further request the use of public funds to review a genetically engineered animal that is not wanted by their initial investors. Did you want to add anything, Paul? No? Okay, thank you very much.